Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to step aside. The words came without a greeting. No smile, no welcome, just a cold wall of authority wrapped in customer service language. The white man behind the desk didn't even look up fully from the computer before speaking, fingers still moving over the keyboard, his tone flat, dismissive. She had been standing at the velvet rope for less than 10 seconds. The air in the terminal was sharp with recycled chill, and the soft hum of boarding calls echoed overhead, but here in the secluded corner, reserved for the VIP lounge, everything was still. Polished wood floors, frosted glass doors, and silence padded with wealth. Behind the desk, 2 attendants sat, one typing, the other watching her with mild discomfort, the kind that comes from not knowing where to place someone. She was alone. No assistant trailing behind her, no one carrying her luggage, just her. A black woman in an immaculate navy coat, a pair of leather loafers without a scuff, and a minimalist designer carry-on with initials barely visible on the side. Her hair was wrapped in a silk scarf, her makeup light. She did not speak loudly. She did not move too fast. She moved like someone who had done this before, who knew where she was going. That, apparently, was the problem. I'm a guest for the Global Summit, she said, calm, clear. My name should be on the list. The man behind the desk stopped typing. He looked at her now, properly, like he was only just realizing she hadn't wandered in from the wrong terminal. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, searching for something, maybe a lanyard, maybe a badge, maybe a man beside her to confirm her existence. Finding none, he gave a thin, forced smile. That list is for confirmed VIPs, he said. This is a members-only lounge. I'm aware, she replied. She didn't explain herself. She didn't list titles. She didn't offer proof. She simply stood, letting her words hang in the air like something already settled. A white woman to the left of the desk leaned in toward the man, whispering something. He nodded once, then turned back to the woman in front of him. I think it would be best if you waited by the public seating area. If your host arrives, they can escort you in. Behind her, a man in a tailored suit approached the desk. The staff snapped to attention. He was greeted with immediate warmth, offered a drink before his name was even asked for. The woman stepped aside slowly, not rushed, not defeated. She moved with a kind of control that made her absence louder than a protest. She did not argue. She simply walked to a nearby seat beside the window, pulled out her phone, and opened a message already waiting in drafts. It read, "They didn't let me in. I'm at gate B. We'll wait there." She hit send, folded her hands in her lap, and waited. She did not need them to recognize her. Soon, the entire building would. You'll need to wait outside the lounge area, ma'am. This is for VIPs only. The sentence landed like a slap, not because of its volume, but because of the precision with which it was delivered. The white man at the reception desk didn't bother hiding his skepticism. His brows were furrowed before she even reached the counter. He eyed her carefully, then looked away, with the disinterest of someone who had already decided what she was and what she wasn't. To his left, a young female staff member gave her suitcase a slow once-over, not to help with it, but to examine it like it might tell her something the woman hadn't said. She didn't smile either. There was no welcome in the room, only the thick, stale air of assumption. The black woman stood quietly, shoulders relaxed, her posture open. She was dressed in polished, comfortable, travel wear elegant, and intentional, not showy. Her coat was cinched at the waist. Her scarf was knotted clean at the throat. Her carry-on bag looked expensive but unbranded, just enough to suggest taste, but not enough to demand attention. And that, she understood, was part of the problem. I believe I'm on the list, she said evenly. For the Global Summit, you should find my name there. The man didn't move to check. He sighed. The kind of sigh that told you this wasn't about policy, it was about presence. That list is for confirmed guests, he replied, and we don't allow walk-ins, no matter the event. I'm not a walk-in, she said softly. She wasn't defensive, she wasn't agitated, but the line had already formed and she was on the wrong side of it. A man seated nearby looked up from his laptop and smirked. He whispered something to the woman next to him, who turned to look. Another traveler, further back, chuckled as if someone had just told a harmless joke. She must be lost, someone muttered, loud enough to be heard, but vague enough to escape blame. She heard it all. She always did. Still, she didn't flinch. I'm happy to wait, she said, offering no apology, no insistence, no need to beg for recognition. She knew how this worked. Rooms like this were designed to test the patience of those who didn't fit the image they had already prepared. The staff exchanged a glance. Someone behind the counter picked up a phone, not to call for help, but likely to confirm what they had already decided must be wrong. She stepped aside quietly, rolling her suitcase back toward the main corridor of the terminal, her steps even measured. She found a chair near the window and sat down without ceremony. She didn't look back. They thought they had placed her in her proper position. What they didn't realize was that she had already been confirmed. Just not by them, not by anyone in that room, but by something much bigger. And soon, they would all know it. "Thank you," she said, voice soft and even, with just enough warmth to sound polite, but none of the need to pretend. The man behind the reception desk blinked, clearly expecting a different reaction. Maybe frustration, maybe confusion, maybe the kind of loud protest that would confirm everything he had already decided about her. But she gave him none of that. No raised tone, no scolding, no flash of a credential to make him feel small. Instead, she stepped back with a quiet nod, adjusted the strap of her carry-on, and turned toward the corridor without hesitation. Her walk was slow, measured, calm. If she was hurt, if she was angry, if any part of her wanted to break the moment wide open, she did not show it. The staff behind the counter returned to their idle chatting. Someone tapped a name into the system. Another offered a drink to the white man who had walked in moments after her, no questions asked. A woman seated nearby barely looked up from her tablet, but the air shifted around her. People noticed, but no one intervened, as always. At the end of the hallway, past the polished floors and the frosted lounge doors, she found a seat near Gate B. Not the most comfortable spot, not the most private, but quiet enough. She set her bag down gently, pulled out her phone, and scrolled to the message she had started in her mind before she even left the counter. "They said I wasn't on the list. I'll wait at Gate B." She hit send. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. On it. "Give me 10. She placed the phone in her lap, folded her hands, and exhaled. Not from stress. From experience. She had been here before. Not in this exact airport, not in this exact lounge, but in this space. The space between who she is and who they assume she is. She had learned long ago that silence is a tool, that staying composed is not submission, it is strategy. And if you do it right, you do not need to explain yourself, you do not need to shout. You simply let the weight of the moment shift, and it always does. Behind her, the airport moved as it always did. Announcements hummed overhead, people wheeled their luggage across slick tile, children ran past in sneakers that lit up at the soles. And no one knew that the woman in seat 17 near Gate B was not waiting for someone to save her. She was waiting for everyone else to catch up. Her scarf had slipped slightly at her shoulder. She adjusted it with care. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out a book, and opened it without urgency. She was not here to make a point. She was here to be remembered. And soon, she would be... She had been booked months in advance, her name confirmed before the ink dried on the venue contract. Her bio had been printed on every program, and her face was already shining on the LED screens scattered across the airport's event banners. Still, none of that had mattered when she showed up in person. The lounge staff had not recognized her. They had not bothered to ask questions. They did what they always did, assumed. She had learned not to be surprised. She was not just a guest at the event. She was the keynote. The final voice, the closing presence, the one they had planned the schedule around, the one sponsors had used to boost attendance. She was the reason half the audience had even bought tickets. But none of that was visible in the quiet poise with which she carried herself. She had never needed applause to confirm her impact. For more than a decade, she had spoken around the world on leadership, innovation, and equity. Her first book had become a blueprint for social enterprise. Her second had cracked the bestseller list and stayed there for 6 months. She had launched scholarships, incubators, and wellness retreats. She had funded startups and restructured nonprofits. She was respected, often quietly by those who mattered, and quietly resented by those who did not know how to process her presence. She had grown used to being underestimated. It was part of the pattern. Step into a room, get ignored, then shift the gravity. She never needed to explain who she was. Eventually, someone else would. In a private group chat with the event's organizers, her name had been highlighted in all caps. Do not miss. Her assistant had been instructed to have her escorted to the lounge with care. But she had insisted on arriving alone. She preferred it that way. No need to prove anything, no need to be guarded. If the room wasn't ready to receive her, that was never her fault. She had learned to read spaces quickly, the ones that bowed too fast and the ones that never would. The lounge had been just another room, another test. One she had passed by doing nothing more than standing tall and saying thank you when she had every right to say much more. Her phone buzzed again in her lap. A follow-up from her publicist. The program had just been finalized. She would be introduced as the future of global leadership. The phrase made her smile not because she needed the praise, but because of how far she had come without it. She looked out the window as a plane lifted into the sky. Soon the room that had dismissed her would realize who they had just turned away, not a name on a list, not just a speaker. The speaker, the headliner, the one whose silence now carried more weight than any introduction ever could. The phone rang sharp against the soft hum of the lounge. The director answered without looking at the caller ID, expecting a question about catering or temperature settings. But the voice on the other end came in fast and panicked. It belonged to one of the event coordinators from the summit, happening just across the terminal. Her words tumbled over each other. "Where is Miss Jordan?" she asked, breathless. "She was scheduled to be escorted into the VIP lounge 30 minutes ago. The opening remarks are shifting. We need her here, right now." The director blinked. "Ms. Jordan?" he repeated slowly, already feeling the temperature in the room change. He reached for the tablet on the counter. "Let me check the sign-in logs." "She's not signed in," the voice snapped. "She told us she was arriving directly to the lounge. You were supposed to have her on the access list." The director froze. His fingers hovered above the screen. The staff around him sensed the shift. The woman behind the desk looked up from her emails. The bar attendant, halfway through polishing a wine glass, lowered it to the counter. He turned toward the white man who had been on front desk duty just half an hour ago. "Did a woman come in earlier? Alone? Elegant? Black? Quiet?" The man blinked quickly. Yes, I think so." His face turned a few shades paler. "She didn't have a pass. I told her to wait for her host." "That was her," the coordinator snapped over the phone. "That was the Miss Jordan, keynote speaker, guest of honor, global summit. Do you understand what you've done?" The director didn't answer. He ended the call quietly, set the phone down, and exhaled through his nose. The weight of what had just been said settled over the lounge like a fog. One of the associates whispered, "Was that the woman who waited near the window?" The white man at the desk nodded slowly. "I didn't recognize her. She didn't say who she was." "She didn't need to," the director replied. Another call came in. Another urgent voice, asking for confirmation that Ms. Jordan was safe, that she had not been delayed or offended. The event organizers were scrambling, trying to rearrange a schedule built around her name. The ripple effect was immediate. By now, everyone behind the counter had stopped what they were doing. The tension was thick, shared, and very, very real. One of the staff members quietly said, "She left about 20 minutes ago." The director closed his eyes. Find her. The white man looked like he had seen a ghost. Not because she had yelled, not because she had made a scene, but because she had done nothing. She had simply walked away. And now the lounge, the staff, the event team, everyone was left holding the silence she had given them. She had been right there, and they had turned her away. Now all they could do was chase the echo she left behind. She was exactly where she said she would be. Gate B, sitting quietly. Legs crossed at the ankle, phone resting in her palm, no emotion on her face, no trace of urgency. The same calm, unreadable expression she had worn when they told her she didn't belong. A man in a fitted suit appeared first, out of breath, sweating slightly along his temples. His lanyard bounced against his chest as he walked toward her, eyes scanning, heart pounding. When he saw her, he stopped short like he was stepping into a moment he could not undo. "Miss Jordan," he said quickly, voice pitched higher than he intended, "I am so sorry for the misunderstanding." She looked up slowly, not startled, not impatient, just aware. She said nothing. He tried again. "We've just spoken with the lounge team. It was an error. Completely unacceptable. I was sent to escort you personally." Still, she did not speak. She stood gently, picked up her carry-on with one hand, adjusted her scarf with the other, and gave him a soft, unreadable smile. "I'll walk with you," she said. That was all. The return walk through the terminal was quiet. He didn't try to fill the silence. She didn't give him room to. As they approached the lounge, doors parted quickly. Staff inside scrambled to adjust posture. Someone reached for the fridge. Someone else adjusted the placement of fresh orchids by the bar. But it was too late for staging. Everyone inside saw her the moment she stepped through the door, the same black woman they had ignored, the one they had dismissed without hesitation, the one they had mistaken for someone not worth seeing. She passed through the threshold without looking left or right. She didn't slow her pace. She didn't acknowledge the stunned expressions or the staff pretending not to recognize her. At the far end of the lounge, an event coordinator stood waiting with a velvet folder in one hand and a program booklet in the other. He looked almost nervous as he held it out to her. Inside was the itinerary. On the cover was her face. Centered. Lit. Beautifully. Her name printed just beneath in gold foil. Keynote speaker, Maya Jordan. Around her, no one said a word. Conversations that had been moving just moments ago fell into stillness. One server stood frozen, water pitcher in hand. A few guests shifted in their seats, eyes lowered. She took the folder, flipped it open, nodded once. "Thank you," she said, then took a seat in the private corner they had prepared for her. The room didn't know what to do with itself. It had already been changed. She did not raise her voice. She did not demand attention. She simply arrived. Again. And this time, everyone finally knew who they had told to wait outside. The lights dimmed as her name was announced. A quiet hush swept through the ballroom, hundreds of eyes lifting to the main stage. Her face appeared on every screen, framed in warm gold light, her name beneath it in bold letters, Maya Jordan, keynote speaker. The music faded, the applause rose, and then she stepped onto the stage with the same grace she carried through airports, boutiques, and boardrooms. No performance, just presence. She wore a tailored cream suit, crisp and elegant, the kind of look that spoke without ever needing to shout. The same scarf she had worn earlier in the day was now tucked neatly at her collar. She moved to the podium calmly, placed her notes on the surface, adjusted the microphone, and paused. The applause settled. She began to speak. Her voice was steady, textured with experience but never heavy. She talked about access, about opportunity, about what it means to be seen only when someone else says, "You are worthy." She spoke of building without permission, leading without applause, and walking through doors that had been shut too many times to count. People leaned in. Every sentence landed with precision. There was no bitterness, only clarity. Her words weren't aimed at one moment, they were bigger than that. She had grown past the need for correction. She was here for reflection, and everyone in the room felt it. Phones stayed down. Pens moved quickly. Eyes didn't wander. She wasn't the loudest voice in the building, but she was the one being remembered. Not just for her title, or her face on the screen, or her presence on stage. It was the way she made them feel. Grounded, challenged, a little uncomfortable maybe, but awake. In the back of the room, near the exit doors, 2 lounge staff members stood quietly. They had been allowed into the event once it became clear who she was. Neither had met her eyes since she returned to the lounge hours earlier. They hadn't spoken to her, they hadn't tried. But they watched now, and they listened. One of them shifted his weight, glancing down at the floor for a second too long. The other stood perfectly still, watching her as if trying to memorize something he could never forget again. Because they knew. They remembered. They had been the first to turn her away. And now she stood at the center of the very event they were hired to serve, the one whose name appeared on every invitation, the one whose words would be quoted in internal memos, press write-ups, and post-event strategy meetings. She finished with a final line. Something soft. Something true. Then she stepped away from the podium, head held high, applause swelling behind her like a wave. She didn't look for validation. She had already carried her own. And the next time someone like her walks into that lounge, dressed in silence, carrying grace, and asking for nothing more than what she has earned, they will pause. They will remember. Because power never needed a badge. It just needed the room to catch up.